got to be professional.
Oh, well, we're in. Hello, everyone.
No,
Hi.
Yeah. So I was just going about my story. So we're talking about language. Mike, we'll get to you in a second. What was the nuclear documentary? Really dark documentary in Britain. America did.
Oh, you mean Threads?
Threads. That was it. Yeah. Have you seen
drama.
it? There's an American. Oh, The Day After was the American one.
Yes,
they
that
did
has,
the same sort of
what's
thing.
his name in, didn't it?
Oh, I couldn't tell you.
Footloose.
But in Threads, Footloose. Who? Well, Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, didn't have Kevin Bacon in.
No, this was like the 80s.
Yeah, Kevin Bacon.
Oh, it might be. Yeah, early days, I suppose. So in Threads, it's dark, you know, but they follow the process of the political leading up to it and the nuclear blast and what happens. But at the end, what they do is they go, okay, so most people have been wiped out now. And they go ahead, I think, sort of like 100 years or something like that. And basically, language is just falling away because it's not needed. It's just food, potato, this, and grunts. Because the language, there's no need for the word romance, or you know what I mean. And bit by bit, it all just fell away. So they said, we will just regress back to basic language. It's just what you need at the time. And if there's not enough people around, that you haven't seen people for 2-3 months, there's a couple of thousand people left in London or in England. All the flowery language just goes away. You forget it after a generation because it's not used. So what were we talking about? Language. Oh yes. So yes. So but they said that was my story. But they said, yeah, I think that happens, and that's why I said to somebody a while ago, and what we brought up on the last podcast about people using what they called emojis. I said language doesn't stick around, and then that will fall away if you start using those. We will go back to hieroglyphs. You'll just be going. And what did he say? He said he's seen sentences with like 6 different words.
Yeah, no,
so that's now.
Yeah,
that's now. So language will fall away.
It was like reading Egyptian hieroglyphs. But sometimes people send me messages and it's comprised totally of emojis, and I just have to figure it out from pictures and
car,
very strange.
House,
anyway,
come to house.
Anyway, let's do a proper intro. Yes.
So Mike Wendling, is it Wendling? Is Wendling?
That's right. Yeah.
What's your background? The Wendling name?
The Wendling name.
Scottish?
Wendling is a village in Norfolk, but I am not from Norfolk. Wendling is actually, if you look at the concentration of Wendlings in the world, most are in the Alsace region of France. Batted forth, back and forth between France and Germany. That's where that name comes from. My relatives, German, Scottish, Irish mix. I grew up in the United States.
So you wrote your book, which was
Alt-Right, from 4chan to the White House.
What does alt-right mean?
What does it mean? Well, I guess it's short. The simple answer is it's short for alternative right.
Yeah, right.
It's a collection, fairly disparate collection of far-right people who all have, I suppose, different focuses for their extreme or trollish or extreme trollish views.
Right.
But they kind of came together in support of Donald Trump in 2016.
Well, they all congealed.
And as part of I suppose the bulk or even mainstream of Trump's support, but there was definitely a strand of his support that was comprised of these people and their various views, which range from being a little bit politically incorrect to wanting a white ethno-state.
Yeah, he's just got the lot.
That's the thing is that doing some thinking about this topic, as a lot of people who are probably spend a bit too much time online has done, is that it seems quite a nebulous concept, really, and it does include such a vast variety of basically right-wing ideas, and also a vast variety of what's the word? As you said, I mean, like trolling and jokes and edginess is a part of it, and there's a broad range of how much people really believe in this. And at some on one scale, you have people who are doing it for a bit of a joke or to be antagonistic or to troll, and then on the very far extreme, you have people who are white supremacists and fascists.
Yeah,
I knew a guy who's a comedian, or used to be, and he said, I guarantee you, he said, they're all lefties, the comedians. He said, but I know a few of them in America that voted for him just to sort of create chaos. So he's got all of that going on there.
And I mean, look, let's be honest. If you voted for Trump, you're not an extremist. de facto. If you voted for the conservatives or whatever, if you voted for Jeremy Corbyn, you're not a militant Marxist, right? It's an interesting point about how serious these people are, right? And you kind of have to, online, you can't tell the difference. You just sort of put that up right there, right? But that doesn't mean that there are not both jokers in that lot and very serious people.
Yeah.
Right. So they're both there.
Yes.
You know that. Because, you know, if you take the apologists for these people, often they'll say, hey, they're all just joking. It's all just a joke. You don't know a joke, you journalist, you mainstream cuck, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, no, this guy went and shot up a synagogue. No, he was serious.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That guy was there along with all the rest of them. Now, this guy over here is just joking when he puts the Nazi meme on there. Not my type of humor, not many people's type of humor. But yeah, okay, fine, whatever. He's not serious. They're both in there.
Yeah. Well, I watched an interview with, who's the mooch? Scaramucci. What's it? Something Scaramucci.
Oh, yeah, Anthony
the
Scaramucci. The mooch. Yeah, it's his proper name.
He's a serious businessman.
I'm a front stabber. I'm not a backstabber. I'm a front stabber. Yeah. You come at me, I'll come at you twice as hard. Yeah.
But it was funny because even though you talk about the trollers and all that, so even a serious business guy, he said, I believed in what he was saying about. And I think, see, yeah, he's got the lot. He's got from the very intellectual businessman, from the financials, right down to the person that's taking the piss. He's got them all in there.
Yeah.
I haven't even really thought about it like that.
Well, you know, I mean, I often, like, you know, in this country, you know, working for a mainstream media organization in London, people are like, what? Trump? But I kind of get it. I'm from Trump land, right? I'm from the middle of America, the flyover states, the sort of fringes of, you know, it's Western New York State, where I'm from, is right next to Western Pennsylvania. And that is Trump heartland country, you know? That is a whole bunch of people who maybe voted for Obama, but went to Trump big time.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like I try to take an interest in it, but it's so fucking depressing. Like you sort of go, I can't. This is like a joke now. I can't. How do you keep yourself sane? Like, do you just have to believe in the voting system will get him out? Because if he gets in again, you just go, oh, forget it. I'm out. I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean, democracy. Yeah. That's working currently, isn't it, guys? Yay!
What did you? Because you covered the election, the 2016 election.
Yeah, I've covered every big thing in the US and the UK since 2015 onwards, right? Okay. And look, I mean, the BBC, we don't take sides. We don't, you know, we're not sort of picking sides, rooting for a side or whatever. And I'm kind of inoculated to to the craziness of what happens during these things. You know what I mean? It's like, this ain't my first rodeo.
Right. So, yeah.
But you know, I guess the thing is, it's always pays to just take a step back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And people who may have been upset about the election result because they are not fans of the prime minister these days, you know, some of these people are my friends, and you just have to say, look, it's only an election. Actually, one of the key insights of, I suppose, the populist movement these days is that there is the cultural space, right? Is actually, so Andrew Breitbart, I quote this guy, said that culture is downstream from politics. Now, Andrew Breitbart was full of a lot of shit, but in that, he seems to be accurate. What that means is essentially, it's not just about voting and elections and whatever. It's actually like, what are people doing culturally that is going to influence politics? And if you want to see the politics of the future, you look at the culture today.
Well, I was thinking, what with the failure of neoliberalism, we have elections, we have a cycle of elections now in the Western world that are dictating effectively the future vision of our societies, really. And this is why there is so much conflict, because where people say people divided, there's conflict and there's politics. And I think that is because we are now, we do have very divergent opinions about how our politics and how our society is formed through those politics, basically, and what future we want for our society.
If it was just another politician that you don't like and he's doing a bit of wrong and a bit of right, it's one thing. But you go, this isn't a joke now. Like, this is serious. Like, things go wrong in America, I mean, it's already started where it leads all the other leaders to start acting in a bad way because there's no policeman anymore. Who gives a shit? If he gets in again, like, that's no joke, man. Like, that's not. Yeah. That could really.
It's not an accident.
Have you got any sort of positivity to it? If he got in again, is it still sort of?
I think he probably will, Andy Trump. I think Trump probably.
Depending
on who runs against him.
If it was tomorrow and I had the bet, I'd bet on Trump.
Yeah.
My thing is, because I said this on the last, because we did a podcast on Trump, and knowing that type of mindset, who he will do anything. He's capable of anything that any human beings have ever been capable of. That's the person you're dealing with. What he would do to stay in power. What tools will he use? Will he go, well, war's always good to sort of stay in power. We could do with a good war. You know, that I don't trust him everything's on the table for him to throw under the bus, but to do anything, to even say I'm not leaving office. Like, and that's what I'm worried about. That
people said the same thing about Obama, though. They said the same.
Oh,
they did.
No.
I heard the same things about Obama.
Obama
would, if Obama wanted to stay on, and there wouldn't be a 2016 election because Obama wanted to be a king, and he was a dictator.
You don't see that happening with Trump. You can see it happening.
I can, but I'm saying that there is half of America that believed exactly the same, what we believe about Trump. Like, sat around this table probably, right. All the horrible things. They believed all the same things about Obama, basically. And what it speaks to is a bigger cultural divide through media and particularly through information. And I think that's the real issue. I think that's the real issue with coming out of this election, the elections in America, is the fact that, like, with the political divide, we don't really share the same reality. Like, but some people don't have a completely different understanding of what's happening in the world and how and what we should do about them. And I talk to friends who have different political opinions than me, and they seem to essentially live in a very, very different world than me. And you have these discussions, and this is why you get angry and you get into arguments and stuff. And I think that is a problem for democracy, basically. Look at the election cycle we've just had. I mean, Boris Johnson hiding in a fridge. Boris Johnson taking someone's phone away during an interview saying, I can't see a picture. What picture? Boris Johnson pointing at the media, pointing at a bunch of cameramen and saying, I don't see any cameramen.
But this is my point, though. If there wasn't America doing it, I don't think Johnson would be doing it as much. There'd still be a moral rule. So that's the big problem, that he sort of releases the poison everywhere. If Trump gets in again, it'll just...
Trump's a symptom, I think.
But it feeds into other countries. I mean, it already has. Like, they're starting to not give a shit now.
True, but Trump is a symptom. Sorry, Trump's a symptom of wider problems. And
I understand.
And I think that the context of this is probably the crash. The 2007, 2008 crash. And a lot of, obviously that was probably inevitable because, you're always going to have this boom bust cycle. You're always going to have these economic depressions every now and then. So, something like this was bound to happen eventually, basically.
When did you, sorry, what was you going to say?
No, go ahead.
Before the election, 2016, where was your mindset? Was you one of he's not getting in, he's going to quit before, and this is a PR stunt? What did you genuinely think?
Yeah, so election night, I would have, my money would have been on Hillary Clinton. Absolutely. But
you thought it's not going to happen?
But I thought, I thought there's a chance, right?
Oh, okay.
Because if you're listening, there's this sort of like rush to, oh my gosh, the whole media got it wrong, blah, 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 blah. And like a lot of people, I thought, you know what? Because if you look at the polls, you say, all right, well, Donald Trump has a 25%, 20, 33% chance, right? Now, that's not nothing. That's, I don't know, name two teams and one of them's going to beat him 2 out of 3 times. The other team will win 1 out of 3. And there was a lot of people saying that, but people don't remember that.
Right, okay.
There were a lot of political journalists who were saying that, who people don't remember. They just say, oh yeah, well, you called it all wrong. So, obviously, like, nobody's surprised these days.
Right, yeah.
But, you can also see that in saying, you know what, the polls are always wrong because they were wrong last time.
Right, yeah.
They were wrong in 2017.
We can't
they were
trust
wrong in 2015. Last week,
They're liars.
the polls were right. They were dead on.
Pretty much
They were
spot on,
correct.
weren't they?
Yeah, they were.
Because they predicted 80 to 85 majority, and what was it, 80? So
Yeah.
I was really
points or
surprised.
whatever
Yeah, I was
it
really
was in the
surprised
end,
at how
yeah.
accurate they were.
And with the sort of general sort of rise of fascism all over the place again, is there any sort of good news, or are we just on a downward trend at the moment? We are going downward. You think you haven't reached the bottom of what we've got to hit yet?
Well, look, I kind of, again, I think it's like, I take the long view here because it's this, we're not in Germany in 1933, are we?
But then neither was Germany before 9. That's my problem.
Germany in 1933 was Germany in 1933. And like, this is a specific moment in our time. And there are specific cultural things that are happening here. You know what I mean? Now, can you imagine, the rise of a youth movement that is like a majority fascist youth movement? You know what I mean?
Right.
That sort of sweeps along millions of young British people or Germans or even Russians or Americans.
Right, yeah.
I can't see that sort of corollary there.
But maybe he's just going to set more poison in that will eventually do that. He starts with the politicians, and then the businesses, and then...
Well,
that's what I'm worried about.
So politically, I think like everything is to play for now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a distinct problem with social media. It puts us into filter bubbles. It makes us sort of agree with everyone. And one of the scariest things is the fact that it makes everything look like a legitimate political option, including fascism, right? Yeah. So if you go to YouTube, you find some really, really far out stuff of all political persuasions. But they're extremists, and they're sitting there alongside a video from CNN or BBC or whatever. And that makes it look, if you are not sort of trained or savvy or thinking very hard about it, that this stuff is the same. So just pick one. Well, you know what? The propagandists have the better videos. And the other ones make you think too much, or too difficult, or just aren't presented enough. But, look, the good news about all this is that actually there's some indications that like young people younger than us sat around this table, are actually pretty good at spotting bullshit, right? Like teenagers.
So you've got faith in the youth. That's your...
Can figure out bullshit in a way that adults can't. And because they grew up with this stuff, they don't have to learn it.
Right.
So... if you're looking for hopeful things, there's some hopeful things.
I do often think that the internet and social media and is the way we're treating it right now. We're like those first people sat in the cinema who saw the footage of the train and all ran out screaming because they didn't really understand. This is a film and there are certain conventions and things can happen. And I think that hopefully, in a couple of generations, people will get used to this technology and go, "Oh yeah," and accept actually all that's just bullshit. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. You shouldn't really believe anything. You just see the film of the train. Oh, that's a film of a train. I get it. There's a train somewhere. Yeah. And so hopefully the same thing with the information and disinformation and alternative facts is that hopefully people will just go, okay, yeah, I should take everything I read on that with a pinch of salt, or at least start questioning the sources and funding of it. Because what I do now is I try to do a bit of Googling. If I read a weird article, I'm like, I wonder who's funding this, or I wonder who's funding this particular think tank. Let me get a little bit more information. Yeah, I wonder who's funding this think tank that this quote's come from. And you do a bit of Googling and you find out, oh, it's some rich dude. Okay, right.
There was a few years ago, you started having a spate of religious films like Noah with Russell Crowe, and there's some other ones, and they went back and somebody traced
the Passion started that off.
Yeah, there was all these, but then it got to like Noah with Russell Crowe, and there was some other one, I can't remember what they were, like Hollywood movies, but they were sort of loosely religious stories about certain people, and they were tracing it back, and they had to go like 8. I think I heard it on LBC. They went like 8 companies back, and then it was a company owned by the church that funded the thing that funded the thing that funded the production company. I thought, oh God, even they're sort of getting in on the act of sort of like funding things that are far from us, but are actually, it's a Hollywood movie about Noah, but really we're trying to bring
there's a whole subgenre now, isn't there? Sort of Christian conservative movies. Yes.
Yeah. What are some of the hits?
Some of them actually do decent money, and occasionally they turn up in the top 10 box office for a week. You know what I mean? Because churches they'll say, "Come and see the film," and they'll the church will hire a bus or a coach or whatever, and send 50 people to the cinema. So they can actually make money, and they cost nothing to make. These films cost like $1 million, and so anything they do is profit. But Old Fashioned is a particularly creepy one. There's one, there's one, Voiceless, which is about effectively a man who goes crazy and wants to shoot up an abortion clinic, but he's the hero.
How does he become the hero?
Because because in this film he's right that the abortion clinic is evil.
Oh, they've taken the stance that he's
right. Yeah.
Oh,
which
Jesus.
is kind of weird because you're sort of watching this and you're like, this is like Taxi Driver, you know what I mean? Except he's portrayed as like a hero, you know what I mean? Like,
am I supposed to feel something?
So you get a couple of changes here, and this could be like a really dark film. It's like the Joker.
So they
or something.
have violence, no sex, I'm assuming.
Yeah, right.
No drugs,
no swearing.
or only to show, or is it like in the classic sort of horror genre films where like the kid who has sex is the first one to die?
Right. Yeah.
Well, they wouldn't do that. It's all the Christian
not,
values are assumed in the background. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So, and these are effectively, and it's weird because the Christianity that they're the ideology that they're obviously promoting in these films seems very different from any kind of Christianity that I think a lot of people would think of, and it's more to do with conservative with a small c values.
Do we have any? What's Scientology up to over here? Do we have anything going on over here?
They've got an office in Tottenham Court Road, or they used to anyway.
Yeah, I went past a shop a few years ago. Yeah. Is that it? We haven't got a big church or anything?
People used to break the windows. Like every time I used to go past it, they had a broken window.
If you walk past it, they used to obviously like get you in for the, what is it, stress test or whatever.
Personality
test. Get out
test.
the cans.
Yeah. You have you holding the,
when I went past the
giving
shop,
a theton meter reading. Yeah.
When I went past one of those shops, I was just going past. I was going somewhere. I was after a meeting, and I came and I walked past. I thought, oh, that's a Scientology shop, and I at the side of the shop, I just looked in at the woman in there. I just wanted to look into her eyes to see like how somebody like that looks. I didn't know what I was looking for. I just thought I want to look into the eyes of somebody that's that. So delusional.
That's what it looks like when you're in a cult.
I just wanted to go, what does somebody look like that's in that?
I find it interesting.
I don't find it
just a small thing. We'll go back to topic, but we'll go back. Don't worry. But I think it's interesting because sometimes someone says something to you and you know it's a lie.
Yeah.
I always think
just to let them talk.
I think that's really interesting. So that's what you look like when you lie. Yeah. Interesting.
I used to do that in nightclubs all the time, honest to God, because when you're working in a club of say 2,000 people. 4,000 people for the night, but 2,000 people are always in the nightclub. You get a lot of repetitive things. Somebody's accusing somebody of this. There's a fight broke out, and the same patterns of lies would come back again and again and again. And certain groups of people would use certain lies. It was really strange. The English guys, it was always like. Now I could say this with authority because I did it for 15 years. So. The English guys were always, he said something to my girlfriend. Like, that seemed to be a thing about my girlfriend. He said something. They're always lying. Nobody was ever guilty of nothing. The black guys, it was more about masculinity. Honestly, it was weird because they'd all say, he grabbed my balls. Like, that was the most horrific thing they could do. And like, I only noticed it accidentally because you're dealing with 8 or 9 fights every single night, 5 nights a week, 7 nights. And then it got to the point where I knew what they were going to say depending on what race they would come from. And the black guys, it was honest, 95% would say, he come up and grab my balls. Now I wanted to say, mate, you're 6'3", he's on his own with his girlfriend. You got 4 of your mates in there. He walked up on the dance floor and grabbed your balls. But it was like, that was their excuse for like the worst thing that could happen in my masculinity. And I would look at them knowing, and it was like, it was a joke in the end because it was happening all the time. I'd look at them and go, what did he do? And,
oh no!
And to go look in the eyes and go, how often is he blinking? Where is he looking at me? Where's he not? And you could see patterns in people like, oh, they're a good actor. Like they believe what they're saying. Especially when people are lying about ID and things, I'd be looking at them, knowing that somebody just told me that works here. They're not old enough. They were in the year below me at school. I'd go, so, hang on, but what year was it? What birthday? And I'd be looking at them. And there was one girl, it's great, where the family had a party upstairs and she turned up. She's a cousin or something. And she was crying, and it was somebody said to me, "I know her. She's not old enough because we had big glass windows to the bar stuff. We're told if you see anybody queuing up that's not old enough, to come and say." And there's a young guy. They said she's not old enough. She's like 2 years younger. Anyway, so I'm standing there, and so I wait for her to come up, and an idea. I said, no, it doesn't look like you. It's me. Her friends are kicking out. How can you say that? You're ruining her. You're a horrible person. And this girl starts crying. I wouldn't lie. And I'm thinking, oh, mate, she is pushing it. And I'm starting to think, is she like maybe because she's like crying now. And she's crying. And she's been out about 10 minutes. And her auntie or somebody comes out. And she's crying. He's been horrible. He doesn't believe me. And the auntie must have been about 45, from the age of when people just were honest. And she basically said, oh, look, mate, she's 17 in a couple of weeks. What's the problem? Like thinking that the old days, it's not like now you're legally bound, but you can just go, look, I'll look after it. He went, she's 17. And she said it, and she was still crying, and she stopped and just walked away crying. I thought, that's like sociopathic behavior. Like you were actually able to sort of bring up the tears and look at to the point that you fooled my instincts. And she just walked off. But then it was like, oh, people can lie quite easily, like because they believe it.
And talking about liars,
back to Scientology.
Segue into Trump and Boris Johnson. I'm going somewhere. With this. I'm going somewhere. Don't worry. What should because I was thinking about this. What does the media do? Being a media person yourself, what does the media do about liars? Politicians in power, who in senior positions, who lie.
I mean, look, there's various flavors of lies, right? There's lies that are misrepresentations. There's lies where, they're speculative lies, right? Now, like, saying something's going to happen in the future. And like people will say, I know in my gut, that's not going to happen. I know in my gut, they're going to sell off the NHS. Well, now Boris Johnson could do anything with the NHS, right? He could sell it. He could more likely probably going to give it a load of money. Cut some privatization deals probably, at some point. But there's sort of fortunately, I'm not on the sharp end of having to like sort through all this stuff. I'm not, strictly speaking, a political journalist. But there's a key, I suppose it's like whether you're sort of criticizing the action or labeling the action or the actor is a crucial thing. Donald Trump is a known person who says a lot of things that are not true. Right?
Provably untrue.
That are provably untrue. Okay? That is flat out. Yeah. But is he like that girl? You know what I mean? Like when he says them.
Does he believe?
He believes them.
So you're dealing with a mental condition, really.
I don't know what you call it, but, that is, lying, a liar is like a conscious thing, or a lie is a conscious thing.
You know what I mean? Often for personal gain or gain of some kind.
It's much sort of more straightforward to say like that is not true. But there's another difficulty about that, right? Which is you can do that, and for whatever reason, people who are most partisan in favor of that politician won't believe you. Donald Trump says this. Jeremy Corbyn says this, pick whoever you want. And if you can spell out exactly why what they are saying is not true or whatever. And people will judge upon their own set of beliefs rather than the actual truth. A lot of the time.
I always had more of a problem. The problems I got with Trump is one thing, but I always had more of a problem with Sarah Sanders. I thought that was more evil than him. He's stupid and dumb, and
he's sort of ricocheting around.
Yeah, but somebody said you're an intelligent person who's choosing to lie. Or
apologise and just having to go around saying, "Oh, well, no, actually, what he meant was this," and "Oh no, actually, this is what's going to happen."
It was funny to watch them all jumping around. You want to go, Jesus Christ, we can't keep up with him.
That's just the face of some of his
own. That's a hell of a job. Yeah.
Where did she go now? Where did she disappear to?
She
was only been seen once.
She's on Fox News or something like that now.
Where else is she going to go? Come on,
right? Oil or
conservative media ecosystem is clearly
because I always thought she was getting so much grief. She just thought, I'm not. This ain't worth it anymore.
Yeah, it's difficult to be a PR person but those people, they don't actually expect the press secretary to tell the truth or a type of truth. Right. Political journalists don't actually expect politicians to tell the truth.
Yeah.
I don't know where this idea came from, but like, have they ever told the truth?
Yeah.
Have they ever told the truth?
It's a different type of lies.
You know, so there's in the sort of different type of lie things is just like, okay, just like making things up, right? So that's one thing. Maybe that's slightly new, but that's kind of the easiest bit.
Right. Yeah.
The other thing is, okay, so I'm going to put the best spin on this that I can. Now, you know, right? We see this all the time now.
Yeah.
But you know, we know that previous prime ministers, previous presidents also did the exact same thing. Of course they did.
Till you say it, he's just a more concentrated version. But it basically is the same old thing. Journalists asking questions of people that don't want to answer certain things, and he's just concentrated version of that. He's just constantly doing that. So, but God, Jesus, I mean, where does that? Like, if you stood back and went, this is like a joke. This whole thing doesn't work. I always used to think when I started knowing what politics was, why is that one job where you can not answer? Like, if I did something in a factory that was wrong, I had to go and see the boss and they asked you a question, you've got to answer or you're sacked. When did it become okay for them to go, well, and this and spin? You go, no, answer the question I asked you. Why? We should be a more quicker way of getting them out. What I mean is that there should be something more than not waiting for the next voting cycle. There should be, oh, he's not answering the question. If you don't answer this question now, then you're out.
Well, or just not even. I mean, they used to go on. I see it. I do see it more and more often now. I see people. We asked this department. We asked this party for comments, and they said that someone was unavailable. Before, I think before you used to have more people coming on and just lying and just bullshitting their way through interviews. Now I see more and more people not giving the interviews in the first place.
Yeah.
Just
not even going to bother.
Just being an empty chair. They're like, well, why bother? You know?
I mean, look, the having sort of worked like in social media exclusively for the last like 5 years, right? I can't even remember at any time interviewing a person from a social media company, right? Because all I bring them is bad news. Because all I bring them is sort of like some sort of investigation, something that's gone wrong on their platform. Right. They never say yes to an interview. And that's, you got a point there. Like they probably would come on in the past, or, you know, this was sort of like companies would come on in the past, right? I mean, we're talking about sort of the era of social media, but the social media companies, the big ones, are completely shut down in terms of this stuff. Very, very hard to get access. Don't say anything, particularly not going to sort of comment on bad news, not going to explain themselves, you know, and they feel like they don't need to explain themselves.
Yeah.
Why is it then? Why do they not do it? Is it because what would be the reason? Is it because there's so much voice out there with social media that it would echo on what they say? They can't just go back and it's ended.
Yeah, probably, but they all,
it just kicks up more dust.
Yeah, they don't see anything for them in it.
Yeah, right.
It's very bizarre because if you think about it, the whole sort of culture that all of the major social media companies come from, almost without exception, is one of openness, right? Silicon Valley, hey, you know, we are going to connect the world. People are going to share. The more sharing, the better.
Yeah.
So that doesn't translate into a culture of like a corporate culture that's like, we are going to share. We're going to be open with you.
So what I'm thinking is there's more monies at stake. That's what it is. It's when you said it's more of a corporate thing. I was thinking, now you're not that thing with the ethos. Now you're a business, and the business doesn't allow you to rock the boat, if you see what I mean.
But there's always been huge industries.
Yeah.
And over the last 2 years, it's become these businesses are sort of going to live and die on the public perception.
But
right?
maybe before, without the social media presence of everyone, your company was more stable. Do you know what I mean? It couldn't be as easily rocked by the public. So if you went and did an interview and a couple of people in journalism didn't like it, that's one thing. But if 1 million people don't like it and they've all got a voice, they can now rock the boat more.
Complaints are amplified now.
Yeah, so it just kicks up more dust than before. I could just do the interview, you don't like it, and I go and it's in the newspaper and it's gone.
And if you take it to politics, right, what we saw that a lot of the most viral clips in the election were of politicians fucking up, basically, like giving bad answers. Some of them were sort of creatively edited, but sort of like car crash interviews or bad answers to questions will be just cut and put on Twitter,
Right.
the opposition party will use it the next
yeah,
day.
So
and so that's why a lot of the time people maybe run from interviews.
Yeah, because you can any couple of words wrong, forget the interview being good or bad, just a couple of words out of place could be disastrous.
Well, we've seen in this election cycle, there was one with the Labour, what was he? I think it was Sir Stammer, whatever his name is one of the shadow cabinet. And he gave an interview on This Morning TV or GMTV or whatever the hell it was on ITV. And they said, right, this was posted on the Tory Twitter feed. And they said, well, what's the Labour Brexit policy then? Let's lock this down. What exactly is the Labour Brexit policy? And they edited some footage of him just staring blankly at the camera going, I don't know.
Yeah.
But in reality, he did give an answer. It wasn't a particularly good. Right. It wasn't a particularly good answer, but like he did give an answer, and it was completely re-edited. So
oh God, you can't do anything, can you? Can't
so even if you answer the question,
it just depends what they want to.
You get taken out.
I was listening to a few American podcasts, and it was funny. One of them, these guys are from Wisconsin, so quite left, and they're saying they actually don't. They've given up watching American news. They watch the BBC in London's channel reporting on the American news to get a sort of balanced view of what's happening. So how is the BBC still holding on to that? Is there a set of ethos, a set of rules they have to abide by?
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. It's we
is
have
it very specific, or is it just impartial?
No, I mean the guidelines are very detailed. They're even more detailed during the time of an election in terms of sort of, it's impartiality, but it's also fairness to contributors, balance. When it gets into an election period, there's balance. I mean,
you have to give a certain amount of time for both.
There's been sort of these rumors of ridiculous, like people with a stopwatch actually timing. That didn't ever happen.
Right.
Or if it happened, it was long over by the time I went into the BBC. But yeah, and look, there's sort of guidelines, and they're all public, right? You can read them, and you can complain, and if you think that somebody messed up or breached to them. And, that's part of actually a decent news operation will have those, and you'll be able to see them. I was always struck when in 2016, I was looking into the alt-right, I was looking into Breitbart, right? And I interviewed some people who work for Breitbart. And
so Breitbart's what?
So Breitbart is a website that was started by Andrew Breitbart in 2016. Right. Steve Bannon, who later became the Donald Trump's campaign manager and later just chief of staff, was editor at that time.
Okay, right.
It became a focal point for the alt-right, and it became through a few of its journalists kind of like the main cheerleaders.
Right, okay. So it's
for this very extreme xenophobic, nationalistic part of the alt-right. But before they all sort of sussed me out, some of them would talk to me. and I would say, okay, so I mean, what were the rules? You get up in the morning and at the BBC, I'm required to know these rules, and I'll probably get quizzed on them at some point, and manager will cite them or whatever, and we'll end up in some sort of tricky. We have a whole department called editorial policy.
Oh right,
that is enforcing these rules all the time, right? What were the rules at Breitbart? Oh, we didn't have any. You didn't have any. You didn't have maybe just
guidelines,
10, commandments or
even a mission statement or something.
No, nothing.
I think that explains a lot, actually.
And it sort of struck me as that's how you can kind of tell the difference between a news organization and a crazy propaganda outfit.
Where were you? How long have you been at the BBC?
About 15 years.
Oh, so where were you just before that then?
Before that, I did a bunch of jobs. I started my career in the Associated Press in the United States. So, that's kind of just basic news service, like the Press Association in this country. It's the equivalent. You're just writing sort of very straight news.
Oh.
I went to university in Ohio.
Okay, to study
journalism, and I wrote for the paper and was on the radio and had a really bad radio program and
what was it?
Played a lot of
Was it
bad
general?
No, we had a really great indie rock.
Oh, it was a music
station. Yeah. I mean, my friends were like good DJs, and I was like a really bad DJ.
Just like listening to the music. I don't like doing the music.
No, I just like listening to the music. I didn't even like I like hanging out. You know what I mean?
Not even the music.
I like going to the shows. You
the
know,
music secondary to the.
But playing records would be like, oh jeez.
Yeah. Oh god. Got to press this button.
Oh god. The classic thing was like, the cool bands would have the 33s or the 45s, but then you'd always get them all mixed up. So you pay the 33 or the 45. Oh,
I didn't sign up for this. What the studying of journalism outside of language and all that? What does it actually teach you? Is there a history? What is it?
I don't know if it taught me much.
I was going to say, how long was the course? Was it a few years?
It was 4 year. It was a standard sort of 4-year course. Yeah, and I mean, look, I was also weirdly trained in, I guess this thing that probably doesn't exist anymore was called news editorial. Basically, I was trained to work on a newspaper.
Right.
I've never worked on a newspaper like as a full-time job, but the idea was for me and like a lot of my peers would be to populate the small newspapers of the Midwest, right?
Oh, okay.
And, I know like 1 or 2 people who are still at the Canton Repository or, maybe are a sub-editor at the Cleveland Plain Dealer or whatever. But by and large, even the most talented people that I was with at the time, like, are working elsewhere because that just doesn't exist. This sort of pipeline where you went from one local newspaper to a bigger newspaper to maybe the Chicago Tribune, because the local news has been completely wiped out in both the US and the UK. It's happening in this country.
Local news,
it is.
Local newspapers are just devastated.
Yeah.
And so that sort of growth industry, I mean, you can kind of see the writing on the walls, and perhaps my professors, as sort of smart and good people as they were, may have been a little bit more on the ball when this came. But in the late 1990s, it was sort of clear, like there was this thing called the internet.
Oh, right.
And soon, someday, this was going to be the thing. And that would just fundamentally change things. So knowing about, spacing on headlines, or sort of what we used to call modular layout on the page, which was basically just sort of like moving blocks around. It was just like not a thing.
I was talking to a marketing guy a while ago, and I was trying to be sort of modern. And I was saying, "Oh, look, the big videos now have to be cut up into smaller videos, otherwise people don't watch them, obviously." And he was going, "Yeah," and I said, "Apparently, like it's getting really short. Like now, people only want sort of like 30-second clips." And he went, "Mate," he said, "that was a while ago." He said, "Now," he said, "forget even clips." He said, "It's not about the value what's in it. It's dependent on what the thumbnail of the thing looks like." He said, "Forget even the heading of whatever it is." He says, "Whatever people see the thumbnail, that's what they choose to click on." He said, "It used to be this little short thing underneath." He said, "Now it's not even that, it's just the thumbnail." He said, "Before they get to the video at all." I was thinking, oh Christ.
To be fair, I've clicked on enough YouTube videos in my life because it has an attractive woman on it. So
Okay.
I'm just putting it out there. That's awful of me, and I'm a bad person, but I do. I go, oh, she's not even doing
backwards.
Not even doing anything about it, but I just think, oh, she's pretty. I'd like to look at that. Yeah.
But my problem is this thing falls away if we don't keep it up. We're going like I keep joking about the film Idiocracy. Have you seen it?
No.
Where it's about a guy. It's a comedy. I watched it about 10 years ago. A guy falls asleep or something. He wakes up and he's gone ahead, and basically
he's gone ahead like 200 years in the future.
Yeah, and the stupid people have taken over. Now I watched
the idea, the conceit is that stupid people have more children than
right,
they're intelligent middle class people, and eventually they will outbreed.
And it's a comedy, and it's this guy walking around, and basically everything, like you go to the doctors and you press a big red button if that hurts, and a big green button, and they go to the cinema, and it's just a guy farting, and everyone's just sort of giggling. And I was thinking, well, that's jackass. Yeah. Like, that's what that is. And then you see all the stuff of just the stupid nonsense that people they're idiots everywhere, and everything's big colourful buttons that you press.
And the president was a former wrestler, /the greatest porn star in the world.
Yeah, and you think that was a comedy. And I was watching it wasn't because it came out before I saw it, and I'm thinking, this isn't really a comedy anymore. And like, so I keep saying, what, you're in Idiocracy. And this thing of talking about the hieroglyphics and just people using emojis rather than typing the words out. I know from being around certain types of places and seeing people move around from level to level, class-wise and into job, you aren't you. You're only you because you keep it up. When that thing falls away, you don't need to be that more. You regress to the point where you do forget things. You don't use certain words anymore. You do start to change your personality depending on what's around you. And if we stop using words and just stop watching videos and just start clicking, and what does that look like? And what the language and the intelligence will fall away slowly, which it has done already.
I think one of the great tragedies of the internet is that we have all this information. We literally have unlimited information and knowledge and truth and facts at our fingertips. And we've never lived in an age more muddled, where there's concepts of truth and reality are more muddled.
Yeah.
Really. I remember having a conversation with my friend, and he said that now with the internet, he goes, there eventually won't be disagreements or arguments between things. Oh, who won the 1978 World Cup, or whatever, or who won the FA Cup last year, or who scored. We would progress that because you could just fact check everything.
Right.
And I remember saying, well, no, because I remember, and I use the example of 9/11. 9/11 is probably one of the most documented events in human history. We have footage of everything, all these details, we have all this information, and there is such a strong divergence of opinion on what actually happened and why it happened still. I mean, most of it's nonsense, don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying that it seems to be that, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. A lot of knowledge is a very dangerous thing.
But at least, I mean, look, at least we can agree on who won the 1978 FA Cup.
Yeah. I expect that's a poor example as I was saying it. Yeah. So
at least, in some ways, it's like, maybe it's better that we argue about these things that, and there's like tons of disinformation out there. It's really, really sad.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
It's really tedious. I mean, I interview conspiracy theorists all the time, and they're bonkers, and it's weird, and you don't want to give these people much attention, except sometimes they just shoot places up, and then you have to figure out what the hell's going on. Maybe, by talking about politics or by arguing about whether this striker is better than this striker, we're like wasting less time. I don't know.
Maybe there's just so much junk out there that nobody needs to focus on big things anymore. There's just so much coming at you. It's like I try to think of a good things of like, where does this go? Where does it get fixed? But are we still going down and down and down into idiocracy? Is it happening?
Look, as an American, I have this sort of like hopeful, I have like this positivity, and it hasn't been beaten out of me by 20 years in this country. But
another 20 years,
still
maybe,
have another. It's getting close. To tell you what's, but I'm almost just a little bit left, a little bit. But I do think, like, back to your point about, there'll be like a future where like we'll look back and we'll like think, gosh, that was really stupid. Weren't we stupid back then? We finally learned how to use the internet for good someday.
Yeah, maybe it's another thing. We're still not.
It will probably take 20 years.
Yeah. So we're at that stage. It's just a bit chaotic because the rules aren't in place yet. We don't really know the structure.
And I often think it's almost a bit like the years in this country before we had video classifications. So in this country, there wasn't VHSs were released, and they weren't actually under the BBFC, under the censorship, and so they didn't have age ratings on them. And you effectively had all these mad horror films coming over from like Germany and like South America and stuff that was like kind of a Holocaust, which has like animal death and torture in it. And they were completely unclassified and unedited and unrestricted.
The good old days.
And 7-year-olds were watching it.
And it was called the video nasty phase.
Oh, right, the video nasties, yeah.
And this was a big thing in the tabloids, is that after a few years, they were saying, kids are watching these awful films and no one's doing anything about it. And these things are like snuff films and this is polluting a generation. So they bought in lots of regulation. I'm not saying, good thing, but they bought in a classification system where they're like, you know what, maybe an 8-year-old shouldn't be watching this. You know what I mean? And I feel that and I always felt that was kind of like the Wild West days of like video and sort of films and stuff where you could just get away with pretty much anything.
Well, computer games as well. Went through the same sort of thing.
Yeah, well, they did. They voluntarily did it so that they wouldn't be that heavily classified, but they are also getting age ratings on them. But I feel that like currently it's becoming more corporatized, but we're at this sort of end phase of the Wild West days of the internet, and I do think that stuff like for instance, I mean, piracy. Not that I ever pirated anything in my life, but piracy used to be a big thing, and we used to download music and films and never pay for anything, and that was fine. Nowadays, you can't do that, and people used to go and post weird. I mean, for instance, look at the evolution of YouTube. YouTube used to be the very first video, My Day at the Zoo or whatever it was. It was literally the guys who made it. They went to the zoo and filmed themselves and like, hi, this is us at the zoo. Yeah, cool. And then it sort of became a weird thing for like memes and jokes and oddness and people just putting bizarre stuff like Charlie bit my finger and all these odd little jokey kind of weird videos. And now it's very, very corporatized. And I think it's very interesting because the evolution of YouTube is almost like the evolution of the internet itself and the corporatization of it.
Yes, the money thing again.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Whether it's business or that, it's like when I was talking to somebody. Was it Nathan? We had an influencer on the other day, and we was talking about like the Facebook. What's his name? Zuckerberg. When he first yeah,
oh right.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, we had an influencer on with all these millions of followers, but we were talking about the internet, and I was talking about Facebook, the Zuckerberg. And you think when he started this, he was a young kid doing this thing, community and all that. And if you just paused it there at the beginning of Facebook and then went to now, and he's up in the whatever the equivalent of the Commons is, and you're answering about all these weird questions, and you're talking like an executive, you go, when does it go from that to that? Like, when do you go from that kid that wants to do this thing, and now you're talking like a lawyer?
And now you're fudging questions about why Nazis and white supremacists are allowed to post on your website.
It's like the politics. It's when the money comes in and it spreads its fingers within your company and the shareholders, and now suddenly it's your face is still there, but the company behind you has changed into this other thing. But then you can't get around that, can you? It's always the money. When you get to a certain level, money will always get involved. And then, I mean, when I was putting the magazine together, and so I was got the ethos about the magazine and no adverts and all this, and he said, I'm going to take it around to publishers and, get it thing. And he said, all right, one of the people that helped me, the publisher, he said, okay, you have to understand. He said, if you take this magazine in, I'll do this and do that, and it's got a great magazine like that. The first thing they're going to do is take 60% and start telling you what to do. And I was like, oh, fuck, yeah, like, that's how it started. The money gets...
It's like with films, isn't it? The bigger the budget, the more voices you have. Like, even in the small things I've worked on, they suddenly start getting money, you get people putting stipulations, start telling you what to do.
I was just finished listening again to Schwarzenegger's biography. Is it the autobiography or the biography? Ian Halpin. Anyway... No, it's his biography I listened to too. So his one, and there's an unauthorized biography. So his one, when he's talking about when he gets involved in politics. Oh, well, it starts with films where he says when he did Conan the Barbarian, and Conan the Barbarian's quite raw, and he's this, and he's a womanizer. Then when they got a lot of money in, and he went to do Conan the Destroyer, which flopped because they said, right, well, now we can't do this. He can't use his sword as much. We can't do this thing. And he said, that's not, you're moving away from what he was, and it flopped. But then he started doing the same thing himself with Terminator. He started to get, let's put jokes in there now.
Well, no, but Terminator 2, he refused to be the bad guy.
Yeah, well,
he said, no, because I'm a big star, I'm not going to be the bad guy, I'm going to be the good guy.
But then
it was a good twist, and it worked.
It's not about being a film and not being a good actor and not being about it being a good sort of auteur thing. money now got involved to Terminator 3, 4, where now you're having to go, well, how many, we need a joke in here and we need the romance thing there and we need to do that. And now you've got to make more, like I said, he's basically a stand-up comedian now, the Terminator. It's become ridiculous. But that's money that's done that. We need to touch that sector of society and that one. We need a few for the women and we need that, and those for the 12-year-olds, but it has to be a 12-year-old film for 18-year-old. And you go, so it poisons that.
Yeah, you can feel the corporate. You can feel those boardroom meetings sometimes.
It's the painting by numbers. When's the hell? And he gets into politics actually when he started to run. So it plays through how he got into politics and all that. And he was going to go in there, and he sent one of these blokes a pair of steel balls and said, "Right, you're going to need these." And because he was going to said, "I'm going to come in as the action man." He said, "I'm not getting involved in all this partisanship stuff. I'm coming in. We're going to do stuff. Stuff's going to be achieved." And that's somebody that's like him saying that there's no failure and we're going to do all these things and I know the answers. And he said, you can't do anything. He said, you just run into a wall of they want to help them, but to do that, you've got to do that, but they won't do that because you're doing that for them. And he said, in the end, you can't, it just, you get ground to a halt because you just can't do anything. It's like I was saying to Andrew, it's like a Gordian knot. It's so knotted at every angle, you can't forget your way through.
My only real frame of reference is TV and films, and sometimes comic books. So I'll quote from the Wire. Well, not quite, but I'll reference the Wire. In that, they have a politician who runs for mayor, and he actually has decent. He actually has things he wants to do. He actually wants to do positive things for the city of Baltimore, and when he gets in charge, he's just like, they're like, yeah, there's no money, we can't do any of that. And he's just completely met by the system. It just absolutely fails him, and they can't do any change.
Well, talking about lying, you think like with Obama or anyone, when they're running, and they're not if they're like a Bush or they're from a political, if they're just somebody that's come up and now they've risen to the point of presidency, that I think they are telling the truth about what they're going to do and what they're going when they get in. But it's when that White House door closes, something changes. And is it that it's easy to say, well, because you owe now all these people money from that have lent you money.
I think
is it that?
I think that's
but you know that on the way up. But are you blinded?
Well, I mean, in the American system, there's checks and balances. You know what I mean? And this is why there's no wall between the U.S. and Mexico, because you need money to build a wall, and the Democrats who control Congress will not give President Trump money to build a wall. Slightly different here, you know, where the prime minister is kind of like an elected dictator.
Yeah.
But, you know, there is and always has been that sort of tension in the U.S. And that's why if you look at Obama, you can basically separate him into the first 2 years when he had a Democratic Congress that was friendly to him, and he passed Obamacare. And then the last 6 years when he did not have a Democratic Congress. And there wasn't a whole lot that happened.
What do you think about if a Bernie Sanders got in? Because he will not change. Like his whole life has been one way, so he won't change. But he's going up against a system which would be the opposite of him because he wants to bring it all down.
I mean, I think if Bernie Sanders won, he would probably almost certainly almost certainly at the same time win with a Democratic majority, if not in the House, at least in the Senate.
But with his,
if not in the Senate, because the Senate I think is a little bit. I mean, I'd have to look at the statistics, you know. But you'd have a fair chance at having a couple of golden years before midterm elections where he would probably be able to do what he wanted, more or less. And it would be portrayed as a mandate. You know what I mean? He would think that he'd have the power and the will of the people would be behind him.
But
I was thinking like I think that an example of a good stable democracy is a system, unfortunately, where you can't really push through really radical change. And I think that's maybe kind of a good thing. So hopefully the bedrock is nice, is good, and you know, tolerant and democratic enough. So you don't need those changes. But like if that bedrock is there, you know, if the democratic, fair, tolerant society is there, brilliant. And a good, I mean, the American system works because it's very difficult to force through any real radical change, really. And I suppose maybe that's a bad thing, but I mean, for instance, Trump had a bunch of ideas, and then when he got in, he can't really pull them off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like with the wall.
Well, I mean, rewind to 2010, and of a coalition government being like seen as like freaky, unstable, you know, but then, you know, how many people would prefer that or a system where you can win an 80-seat majority with 43% of the vote? You know what I mean? There's sort of every system has its trade-offs. And if you have a system that constantly returns coalitions, then you are going to have that kind of inertia, right? No one party is going to be able to do anything. Do you want that, or do you want your team to have a chance at winning the whole shot?
Yeah.
That's what anybody, you know, that's sort of like the difficulty for anybody who comes down on a partisan line is, right? Because you could say, oh, geez, this system's terrible. But if you're a Labor supporter now, you could say that. But then what about if, you know, in 5 years' time, you have a chance to win 60% of the seats with 40% of the vote?
Yeah.
Then do you want to take that, or do you want to risk it by reforming the system? I suppose that's why there is no sort of proportional representation or anything in this country.
The Schwarzenegger thing, so I just finished listening to last night. He's talking about the gerrymandering and all that. And when he just explains what it all is exactly, and you go, what the fucking hell is that? Like, you're picking and choosing who can and can't fucking vote for you. Like, you go, how did this get in? Like, how did it happen?
Well, they're doing it now. I mean, they're restructuring the districts in British constituencies now. And in fact, I think they're getting rid of how many? 40 or 50 constituencies, including Islington, which of course is Jeremy Corbyn's seat. For some reason, they've targeted that, and that's no longer going to be a constituency.
I listened to a BBC podcast a while ago, and they were doing about the types of corruption that go on in Russia and Africa and things like that. And they were the journalist was saying some of the stuff that had gone on that he'd reported, and one of them was this was a Russian city or town somewhere where they'd handed out. They knew in certain places people were going to vote a certain way, so they supplied them with pens that was vanishing ink. So once they wrote on it, it would just vanish. Once they wouldn't it was an African one. The guy that was supposed to come in that they knew was going to get voted in, they just didn't let the plane hit the ground. They wouldn't allow him airspace to come in, and they said that he turned around and went back. He cowered it out, and then so the guy won. Like, just levels of that sort of like invisible ink. Think of that. Like,
real balls out corruption. I mean, no mucking around. None of this secret dossier, 45 minutes. None of this nonsense. Invisible just straight ink. Up.
One guy said they wouldn't let us land in the country. Wouldn't let me land the plane.
I was thinking about the Iraq War, as I sometimes do. As I sometimes do, like to have a
randomly pops in your head.
Yeah. Just catching nightmarish visions. And I thought, and I wondered if, because they went to such elaborate lengths to string this whole narrative together, and I just wondered, would they bother to do it now, or just say, oh no, we're just going to invade Iran, screw you? I don't know.
Well, look, yeah, I mean, they're not they're not even bothering. If you look at Trump, we're not going to give you an excuse for anything. We don't have to answer to anyone. That's what they're getting to. We're like we're not even going to do an interview. Well, how about that?
I have to say the one positive thing about Trump.
Oh yeah.
Okay, here we go. Interesting or controversial is that I thought that they would probably, when he got elected, I thought, I could see us probably being in a war with America within 3 years. I see the opinion polls dipping, and they'll probably get into another scrape in the Middle East somewhere. Just pick, literally pick somewhere random. Just go, right, okay, you're this week's boogeyman. I don't see them doing that in the next year. I mean, I might be very wrong. Something awful might happen, and there might be a whole thing. But I don't see us getting into war. I think it's too much effort, and I do think that the groundswell opinion is very much against foreign intervention. They seem to be very much isolationist and against foreign intervention. I think that that's one of the few positives.
I look at it as a punt on his. If he's going out, if he's going down in flames, and he's not gonna, it looks like he's gonna get voted out. I can see him using that to get a war going somewhere. Something will get bombed, and then focus will be taken off of me, and now we need a strong leader Anything's capable.
That Saudi thing was a bit weird when those oil tankers were getting banged into.
Do you think there's going to be documentaries in the future going, he was a traitor? I mean, is anyone just saying that? If you put it all on paper to somebody from another world and go, look, this is what he's saying about all these countries here, and this is what he's doing over here in his own country. What do you say that? Obviously, he's a traitor.
Currently, Congress is. I mean, they're impeaching him.
They're not saying. It's just like, is he a fucking?
Well,
yeah. I mean, essentially, it is. It's not sort of like he's not sort of. Yeah. It's not sort of treason that he's being accused of.
Yeah, he's not like a bad politician, and he's not sort of favouring them. He's doing all that for them over there, and he's doing all this over here to destroy this here. What are you not seeing here? Like traitor, like a proper. I think that. They must have something on him. That's what I'm thinking. Because in terms of Russia, when he's going out there doing the Miss World and all that, and they're putting up with all the models and all that, they think they're like China. They think long term. Don't tell me they didn't think, well, he's this billionaire bloke who's quite famous and this and that. Let's stick some cameras in his room and give him whatever, because in the future something might happen with him, and we'll have that for him. It's got to be, because it's so ballsy, like it's so one-sided that you go, there's got to be something here that's driving that. And talking about working in clubs and starting to read people when they're lying, one thing that stuck out with me about there's the power play between him and what's the Russian fellow? Putin was when they were sat together. And somebody said to him, have you told him not to muddle in our elections or whatever? And he jokes and he goes, don't muddle in our elections or something like that. But it's the way he said it and where he was looking, I thought there's a power play there that he's not used to talking up to him. It's not as simple as, he's powerful and I'm not. There's a certain type of look that people have that if I was sort of like all emperor in everything I was doing and you were a low level person and then one day you had to pretend to be my boss, there's a way you can't actually cross over when you're trying to even fake being an enforcer on me. And when they said to him, have you told him not to be a meddler? And he goes, don't meddle in our elections. And I thought that
you could see who's the big dog in the room. Yeah, basically.
So that means,
wasn't Trump.
But that's not a short term thing. That means something long term has gone on where he can't actually.
Well, that's something. He made a joke out of it. He made a joke out of it because he couldn't go. Okay, well,
that's somebody that's been told what to do. Like the reaction that but over a long term, that's an ingrained power play. That's not like he's quite important.
You say. I suppose the correct political answer would be like, that's a very serious issue, and me and President Putin will be discussing.
But he didn't look him in the eye. He joked. He used the hand. And he looked away at that angle. And I thought, right, that's not right. That's a long-term power play thing. He tells him what to do. And that scared me when I saw that. Right, I don't want to end on. Sorry.
Well, I was thinking we should maybe try and wrap things up a little bit.
Yeah.
But I was thinking to get back on topic. What do you see the future, if any, of the alt-right movement? Because my personal view is I think it's lack of substance and lack of real hard codified ideology or whatever might be its ultimate ruin, because a lot of these figures have fallen by the wayside because they don't.
So I mean, the kind of history of it, and it's not like I have sort of updated my book, but like if you fast forward, what you saw is basically after what happened in Charlottesville and a very sort of violent confrontation and a counter-protester died. This sort of woke Americans in particular up to this. And the splintering kind of started earlier than that. Donald Trump's victory was the start of it, because you had all these sort of different factions. They all had different hopes for Trump. Oh, he's going to end gay marriage. And other people who are like, no, we love gay marriage. Let's just have a white nationalist ethno-state with gay marriage. All these sort of competing sort of factions started going at each other. They got under intense political pressure after Charlottesville and intense sort of media pressure. So basically, it's splintered and fractured. Now that sounds like a good thing, but on the other hand, you have had terror attacks from the far right at a scale like we haven't had for years, which is a really, really scary thing, right? So you got Christchurch, you have mosque shooting in California, Texas. That's the violent end. You have other people who have been sort of more like running a mile from that and actually sort of like trying to get absorbed into the mainstream. You have people who've sort of gone off on various different weird crusades or different, gone down there sort of. And you've had people who sort of like have run away from politics altogether. A lot of the people who are online who are like memeing hard for Trump, kind of lost enthusiasm because actually that's boring. It's a little bit boring when your guy is winning and you're trying to be a rebel, right? that's not like cool. Cool is being a rebel.
It was being the outsider. And then when he got in, yeah.
Yeah. So, all these factions are split up, but it's not, the sort of momentum doesn't go away. And I have a feeling, just from what I'm looking at, that these people will all come together again to rally for Trump at the end of next year.
Probably.
So, and I don't sort of like try to exaggerate how much of an effect they actually did have. Part of it is just they were a fringe group; they weren't that big, but they did have some sort of, there were sort of political repercussions or impacts that came from after that. So we'll see whether that dynamic happens again, and a lot of it depends on who he's up against.
Somebody said on the radio a while ago, they said he's one of them people that's good at rallying against something, like complaint, but he's not good at doing things.
Yeah.
And now we know before we didn't know what he would be capable of achieving. It seemed like anything was possible with him going into politics, but now we sort of got a scorecard on what he can and can't do, and it doesn't look good. So they haven't got that sort of thing behind them anymore. Now we know he's not. In fact, somebody was on the radio. It was an American station, and they were talking to people that had gone against Trump after having voted for him and all that. And one of them, she just said, he just seems to moan a lot. And I thought, oh, that's good. Like, because if you see it, he's just constantly moaning about it. You go, do you actually do anything? You're just moaning all the time.
You run out of road eventually, right? It's like, oh yeah,
you got to do something, mate. You got to.
It's sort of this thing with the conservative government here. Yeah, whatever you think of the argument, there's only so much that you can say. Well, that was that Labor government 9 years ago that got us into this mess in the first place. People just sort of forget, and they just don't care anymore.
Yeah.
And how far can he actually do it? Now it's only sort of like 4 years for Trump, and there's
the
any number of
Obama
people he can blame. Yeah. There's any number of boogeymans that he can sort of point at, no matter who gets nominated. So it's basically whoever is the person on the other side is just going to have to figure out
Obama this and Obama that.
Attack. Yeah. And well, okay, so if it's Joe Biden, then Obama's vice president. That's easy in a way. But I don't know, Joe Biden, he's a real kind of suck it to you kind of crusty old guy too. So that could be very ugly.
Are any of them under 70? I mean, they all seem to be.
Oh, there's a whole bunch, haven't they? Is
Mike,
Tulsi Gabbard still running? I don't know.
Yeah, she won't. She was not going to go anywhere. But I say that, and that means that she'll probably win.
Yeah.
And Marianne, what's her name?
Oh, the crystal lady.
Yeah. She's about 60 though. Doesn't look it, but yeah. So maybe there's something to those crystals.
Did anything come out about Trump going to that hospital visit or whatever? Did it go any further? Was it just locked down? He definitely had to go to the doctor.
I don't know. He was on Fox News a couple of days before, like 7 a.m, ranting. And my first thought was genuinely, is he high? like genuinely,
when he started having a go at that Greta, that 16-year-old.
No, but he was just talking nonstop, like really, really quick. And I was like, dude, are you bumped up? Like, what? So heaven only knows what's going on there. It seems so chaotic. It just doesn't seem like it can last very long.
You're just waiting for your feet to sort of get some stable ground to sort of go.
Who knows?
It's a very good. The Democrats have actually, in an analytical sense, done a very good job with this impeachment because it really irritates Trump, and there's very few things that irritate him and get under his skin, and this clearly is one. And they know that they don't actually have to go through with it. So while everyone's saying, well, we should just decide it at the ballot box, that's the fair, square American way to do it, everybody knows, including them, that he will not get removed from office. So it sort of chips away at his personality and makes him do these rants at Fox News
He's not
at
good
7
at
a.m.
uncertainty, is it? He needs somebody to, like with the whistleblower thing, he hates not having somebody to point his vengeance at. And whether not knowing if he's going to get impeached or not, he hated it.
He just doesn't deal
Yeah.
with pressure, it seems. Any slight criticism, any slight pressure, like
Right.
all of a sudden he just has a complete freak out. Like,
Well, from our Trump podcast, you go, you realise he's basically, like I said, he's a con man. His whole life is a bit of...
allegedly.
No, but I mean, in terms of what he says and what his background is, everything is bollocks, basically. All the failures of business, one after the other, hiding this, hiding that. He's the fraud, the thing with the charity, that he now can't run a charity thing. It's just constantly and that's why they said when he started going to Russia, because in America, he basically burnt all his bridges, all the things of his dad's family and all that. He'd borrowed the money, he'd done that. They wasn't taken seriously anymore. So he had to start outsourcing where he was going to get money from, which is when took him over to Russia, because nobody would invest in him anymore. His whole name was known as being, it's bollocks. It's only in the media, in the camera, front of the camera, he's known as being this thing. Behind the scenes, he can't get any money because he's failing one thing, doesn't pay people back that he's owed money to. So I think, and I said on the podcast, I think there'll be documentaries on the biggest con in history. Not the best con man, I've said this before, because if you start off with 400 million, that's a different thing. If he had started off with nothing, he wouldn't be a good con man. He would be on the streets. But if you start off with 400 million, you can build up a persona with 400 million over the years that you can then sell. But he's not a good con man. He's just the biggest, I think.
Well, I think it'll be fascinating when all the information eventually does come out.
Yeah, the documentaries.
All the documents and stuff, and, Official Secrets Act, wears off. I think it'll be fascinating to see
people aren't scared anymore, scared of him, and they start coming out and say, well, I didn't really follow him. What I was trying to do was this, and I was trying to help the country. And go, where were you when he might have been, the ruler or the emperor? I've got to end up on something good. Do you think...
Who won the FA Cup in 1978?
Wait. I don't know. I'm guessing Liverpool.
I used to like it. I used to play American football. I used to love American football. And it's a bit of a... Then when I was 14, I used to get people to play it in school. And then everyone's like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you throwing that ball? And then when it became popular, it annoyed me. So I stopped watching it. I thought, holy bloody, I was watching this when I was 4 a.m. and on a Sunday night twice a week. And now people are, American football. And I was like, oh, fuck you. I was there 20 years ago. I don't know why I said that story.
Well, we can end there because the Buffalo Bills are my favorite team, very local team. And they are actually good this year.
Oh, really?
They're very good.
I like the fact
they're
they brought
going to
back
make
the LA
playoffs.
Rams. They brought back the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Great, because they were my
Rams,
team, and they
good.
vanished for God knows how many decades. Yeah. The only thing I remember about Buffalo is you'd always see them with 10 coats on. Was that right?
Yeah,
it was always freezing cold. Whenever there was a Buffalo game,
as hell.
There's people with 4 coats on like this. American football. You got any thoughts?
None, actually.
Go Rams.
One of the few things I probably don't have an opinion, a stupid opinion on.
He ordered your book and it didn't turn up in time.
Yeah,
so he's got to apologise.
Oh, I was going to bring a copy. I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
I was very disorganized.
I bought it, and I usually get stuff off second hand, but I bought a new copy, so you get the sale. Don't worry.
All right, listen. It took a while to get the thing put together, so I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no, thank you.
And you've made me feel a little bit better saying when you said about the kids, like the next generation know more than we do. So maybe they'll see through the bullshit a bit more.
I hope so.
I'm gripping onto that with my fingernails.
I think everything's cyclical, isn't it? I do believe that all movements and all politics is kind of cyclical. And I think we're going through not the most positive cycle right now, but I think
that things will change.
I don't think that politics is static in any way. I don't think society is static in any way. I think that it will eventually change and do something else eventually.
But we just hopefully it's good. That's the thing.
Yes, we just need to hang on in there.
Right.
Okay. Right, Mike. Thank you very much.
Hey,
I really appreciate it. Cheers.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Bye. Bye, everyone.